Good morning, everybody. Once again, that we are reminded freedom is not free. To protect it, our service members step into harm's way. And this weekend, 6 service members lost their lives doing just that. I pray for all the men and women in uniform, for the families who are mourning, and the families whose loved ones still remain in combat. Your sacrifices for this nation will not be forgotten. While our brave men and women are risking their lives overseas to keep America safe, Democrats here are tearing down our defenses. Nearly every single Democrat voted to shut down the Department of Homeland Security. This wasn't a messaging mistake. It was a deliberate policy choice, and a very dangerous one at that. Between 2021 and 2024, the Biden administration's open borders allowed more than 380 individuals on the terrorist watch list to be apprehended attempting to cross our borders illegally. We also know that Biden released more than 700 Iranians into the interior of our country after crossing our border illegally. Now, that's just what we know. President Trump didn't waste 1 second cleaning up that mess. Within days of taking office, President Trump got to work deporting Iranian terrorists who had entered under Biden. They weren't overseas, they were here on American soil. The job isn't finished. The threat is real. And when the world's leading sponsor of terrorism is promising retaliation, this is the moment Democrats decide to shut down the very agency created after 9/11 to prevent another attack. Really? I ask them, whatever happened to never forget? Seems like perhaps they have forgotten. And what's their excuse? To shield illegal, violent criminals? I mean, seriously, you can't make this up. Last week, a mother stabbed to death by an illegal alien with a criminal history for over 30 years. The violent criminal is who the Democrats are choosing to protect. In Louisville, a woman was kidnapped and assaulted by a man who should have never been in this country. The violent criminal is who the Democrats are choosing to protect. In North Carolina, a man was brutally tortured in his own home by 2 illegal aliens, one of whom had already been deported. And yes, I will say it again. Those are the violent criminals that Democrats choose to protect. Our service members, law enforcement officers, are doing their duty. They're protecting freedom, and they are protecting American citizens. It's time for Democrats to do their duty. This is no moment for partisan games. This is a moment for patriotism. Reopen DHS, and please reopen it now. With that, I yield to the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Brian Mast.
I'd start by speaking about our service members as well. Make sure you can hear me. I'd start by speaking about our fallen service members as well. Representative Zinke and myself, we were discussing this, literally heartbreaking to us, and I mean that. It's something that can bring us to tears as we think about TAPS and we think about that crack of a 21 gun salute, and you think about seeing our friends, spouses, families handed flags. You know, when you think about those things, it literally it brings you to tears when you think about old friends. And we have families that are about to go through that. It's a very serious thing for our country. But what our reflection is also about that is that we can't even count the number of friends that we have buried because of the hand of Iran, year after year. There's an estimate that 1 in 6 service members that were killed from roughly 2003 to 13, 14, that window, killed by the hand of Iran. Those were our friends. And finally, and that's why the thanks goes to President Trump, finally, we have a commander-in-chief that's willing to say that that comes to an end. We're no longer going to face this imminent threat year after year after year. What does that imminent threat look like? What has it been beyond just the last 4 days? What has it been for the last 40 years or the last couple of years that President Trump decided he needed to act against it? Almost every member of Congress has voted to say that Iran is the largest state sponsor of terror because they're an imminent threat. Almost unanimous votes condemning their continuous support for proxies that are attacking America, our people, our merchant marine fleets, our Navy vessels. Almost unanimous votes condemning that. Almost unanimous votes calling their nuclear program a massive threat to the United States of America. Almost unanimous votes designating the Iran Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization. All of those votes, they weren't almost unanimous for no reason at all. They paint a clear picture of what everybody has concluded to be an imminent threat against the United States of America. Year in, year out, Iran has been an imminent threat against us because they have never faced an imminent response until President Trump. What did they face instead? They faced negotiations that told them how much uranium they could enrich, when they could reach a nuclear weapon instead of never. Literally received pallets of cash. That's the difference in the approach that's going on here. How imminent is this threat? 3 U.S. service members killed at Tower 22 a year and a half ago. Imminent threat. Strikes against our bases in Syria and Iraq all through 25. Imminent threat. Lost a fighter jet off one of our carriers in the Red Sea. Imminent threat. All the countless merchant marine vessels that were continually having drones fired at them while being protected by American ships. Imminent threat. And the list goes on and on of the ways that they were constantly attacking us. They wanted to fight every single day. They were looking for the opportunity to have it. I would tell you this, there's the semantics debate. I was just talking to CNN. We were having the semantics debate about battle or war or conflict or combat operations or whatever people are going to call this. I spent years in war. None of us want it. None of us want to see our service members put in harm's way. None of us want to see our service members killed. Iran has proven there is literally no other way to stop them from continually attacking us and all of those things that I listed unless we actually physically stop them. I don't think this fits the narrative of my Democrat colleagues, but it has to be said because it's the continual question. President Trump had the authority to conduct this very limited operation under Article 2 in the War Powers Resolution Act. He's working to get the job done. The limited scope of the operation, destroy every single piece of Iranian military hardware that has been used to reach out and touch the United States of America, our forces in the region, and our allies, or that could be used. Why? Because they have proven that they are an imminent threat and they will use it every single chance that they get. And finally, we have a president that says that comes to an end. No longer. I thank him for his dedication to this mission, and I thank him for the first time, although this is not the purpose of the mission set, for the first time in my lifetime, except for the killing of Qasem Soleimani, the deaths of all my brothers and sisters in arms that I mentioned, the aforementioned, are finally being avenged. And I thank God for that.
Thank you, Brian. this is personal to all of us, but we know it's especially personal to you and our warrior colleagues and all your families. For the past 47 years, the Ayatollah and the Iranian regime have terrorized Americans, the Middle East, and their own people. The regime began its tyrannical reign by taking 66 American hostages in 1979. More recently, Iran-backed Hamas terrorists killed 46 Americans and kidnapped at least 12 on October 7th of 2023. Terror attacks, assassination plots, drone strikes. More Americans have been killed by Iran than any other terrorist regime on earth. As long as the Islamic Republic of Iran stands enabled and empowered, the world will never know peace. Over the weekend, as Brian referenced, President Trump said enough is enough. Operation Epic Fury is a bold, decisive, and necessary act of strength against a belligerent and ruthless enemy of freedom. The battle with Iran has been raging for nearly half a century. President Trump is ending it once and for all. While the president displays leadership and strength on the world stage, Democrats here in Congress are doing the exact opposite. We are now in the third week of the Department of Homeland Security shutdown because Democrats would rather play political games than protect the American people. As we speak, there are members of the U.S. Coast Guard, a component of DHS, based in the Middle East. They've been there for a decade. Iran is actively targeting our forces in that region, and Democrats are standing in the way of these American heroes from receiving a paycheck while they risk their lives in defense of our nation. Why? Because they want to stop the president from enforcing our nation's immigration laws. It's sick, it's wrong, and it's dangerous. Now is the time for Democrats to quit grandstanding and start standing with the American people. And with that, I turn it over to our leader, Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Whip. We all pray for our men and women in uniform who are carrying out this critically important mission. We mourn the 6 who have lost their lives just in the last few days. But we also recognize the threat that Iran has posed for decades. And Chairman Mast laid it out incredibly well. Chairman Mast, who himself served our country so honorably, but understands that this is a threat that has declared war against America and carried out attack on top of attack on top of attack against our men and women in uniform. Hundreds of service members dead at the bloody hands of the Iranian regime, who is no longer with us, because President Trump finally took the action that many other presidents have contemplated, but ultimately decided to push off to somebody else. And President Trump is the leader, the commander-in-chief, who said, we are going to protect America against evil dictators who chant death to America. And by the way, when they're enriching uranium at weapons grade level, we ought to take them at their word, because that was their intention. For years and years, they were rushing towards a nuclear weapon. And even after the Operation Midnight Hammer decimated parts of their nuclear weapons program, they still went back and started trying to rebuild a nuclear weapons program, continued enriching uranium. They were never going to stop. And it was crystal clear during the negotiations, where Secretary of State Rubio did such an incredible job, as well as his team, trying to get a peaceful solution to this. Iran made it clear they had no intention of reaching any kind of peaceful solution. And ultimately, their intent was to kill Americans, as they have been for decades. And if you wonder what their resolve is, just look at the tens of thousands of their own people that they killed just in the last few months. And so we support President Trump in this important action. We pray for the safety of our troops who are carrying out this incredibly important mission, and our allies in the region. And you can see more countries getting pulled in from even around the Middle East region. But at the same time, we also recognize this is no time to have the Department of Homeland Security shut down and their ability to protect Americans limited. And who did that? Democrats in Congress, who weeks ago made a reckless decision to shut down the Department of Homeland Security. But now that we're at a heightened threat, and it's not just hypothetical threats, you can see what happened in Austin. A man with a Property of Allah shirt killing Americans. When we saw the open border of Joe Biden, for years letting in people who want to do us harm, people on the terrorist watch list, people from Iran that could do us harm, we need to be more vigilant than ever and have a fully functioning Department of Homeland Security with all the capabilities, cyber capabilities, which right now are dramatically limited because of Democrats' reckless and dangerous action to shut that department down. It is time for their dangerous games to end. Democrats need to vote with us tomorrow to reopen the Department of Homeland Security to make sure that our basic mission as members of Congress to keep Americans safe continues. And we're going to give them that opportunity. And now our speaker, Mike Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Thank you, this leadership team, Chairman Mast. Our hearts and our prayers do go out to the families of our 6 fallen service members who've given their lives in defense of freedom and this country and America's interest. And I love my colleague and classmate Brian Mast, and he is a visible reminder of the service and the sacrifice that so many provide this country, and those who are brave enough to put on the uniform and put themselves in harm's way deserve our eternal gratitude, and they have it. Let's talk about Operation Epic Fury. The details, the latest of which were recounted this morning by the Secretary of War and the Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff. They've been remarkably transparent. As you know, last night, members of the House received another very thorough briefing on the operation. We had, of course, the Secretary of War there, Pete Hegseth, and Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Raisin Kane. You had Secretary of State Marco Rubio. You had John Ratcliffe, Director of the CIA. We had legal representation from the Department of Justice. They answered questions forthrightly, and it was, I think, very helpful to a lot of the members, or everybody that participated. They have communicated at great length the details of the operation, both to Congress and to the American people. I think you can make an argument this is the most transparent administration in U.S. history. The Commander-in-Chief himself has been very forthright and very vocal about what's going on, answering questions and providing the insights that I think that people need. We're 4 days in so far on Operation Epic Fury. It's been limited, precise, and extremely lethal. It's been a remarkable success thus far, as recounted as recently as the last couple of hours by those leaders I mentioned. The early results are very encouraging. Iran's naval fleet is degraded. That was the first part of the mission, or at least the second part. The first part was the missiles. And its missile facilities in Iran and the stockpiles have severely depleted. Its former Ayatollah, the mastermind behind decades of terrorist violence, recounted by Chairman Mast and all of us over the last several days, he is now deceased. The administration has detailed its rationale behind the operation, and it bears repeating. The largest state sponsor of terrorism, Iran and its proxies, have killed more Americans than any other terrorist regime on earth. They are dedicated to it. They have been, and they say the quiet parts out loud. They wanted to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, and they'd like to take us out as well. We're the great Satan in their analogy and their misguided religion, and there was no way to appease them. In defiance of every American president since Jimmy Carter, the Iranian regime has pursued the means to acquire a nuclear weapon so that they could take that madness and that ideology to its full conclusion. Everyone, regardless of political affiliation, should be able to agree that that can never happen, should never happen. President Trump exhausted every diplomatic channel to this end. He tried. They bent over backwards. Since March of last year, he directed his administration to initiate 5 different rounds of negotiations with Iran's leaders. Most recently, and along the way, they've offered sanction relief, normalization, and most recently, they even offered nuclear fuel for life if Iran would cease its domestic nuclear program. And they were rebuffed. Iran said no. Why? Because we all know why they were enriching uranium, and it had nothing to do with medical devices and energy supply. It was to kill their enemies and the U.S. was at the top of the list with Israel. Think about that. While Iran dragged its feet, its leaders pressed forward with its nuclear ambitions. They were stalling because they wanted to kill us. They continued to advance their conventional missile systems at a speed and a scale that greatly outpaced our regional allies' ability to respond. That is what made it imminent. In short, the situation was untenable. We had our personnel, troops, citizens, installations, and assets in harm's way. And through this operation, President Trump took decisive and defensive action to ensure the safety of our forces, our citizens, our allies, and our homeland. In my estimation, this course of action was necessary, lawful, and effective, and reversing it now would weaken America. Congress has a constitutional right to exercise its oversight authority, and we will. But we also have a duty and obligation not to undercut our own national security. One last note, there's a misconception that Operation Epic Fury is in any way a diversion from Republican demands for peace. It's the opposite. Peace is not secured through appeasement, and it's certainly not secured by airdropping billions of dollars on terrorist regimes, which is what previous Democrat administrations have done. Peace is secured through strength. That is the principle that our party has stood for my entire life, and on principle before that, articulated the idea of peace through strength. That's what this administration is demonstrating, and that is why America is the last great superpower on the planet, and all freedom-loving people around the world are grateful to God for that. Let's talk about DHS. It's been mentioned this morning. If we're being wise, now is the time to be vigilant at home and to ensure that all of our doors are locked, so to speak. Obviously, everyone understands that it's a heightened threat environment. Global tensions are high, threats are constantly evolving, and America's adversaries are watching for any sign of weakness on our part. We cannot show them that. And yet, all this is happening. We have Democrats running around here playing political games in Congress. It's infuriating. They've shut down the very agency that is responsible for securing the homeland. The Democrats have shut down the agency responsible for keeping Americans safe. Unbelievably, they've already instructed their members to block funding. They sent out a whip notice to tell House Democrats, to instruct them, to give them the order to vote down Homeland Security funding. That's a bipartisan consensus bill that had already been prepared by the House. It will be on the floor tomorrow for yet another vote, and you better watch that board, and everybody in America better watch that board. Anybody who votes to block funding for the homeland, it is shameful. I don't know how else to describe it. It speaks to a long record of Democrats' deliberate efforts to undermine America's safety in the essential operations of DHS. We all remember that under Joe Biden, Democrats opened wide our nation's border for 4 catastrophic years. They allowed hundreds on the terrorist watch list to cross our border illegally, and unwittingly, they released 2.2 million known gotaways into the interior. We have no idea where so many of those people are. These are individuals who entered our country illegally. They were detected by law enforcement, and they evaded capture. We don't know where they are. We don't know what they're doing or what they're plotting. And we pray that we can find them and apprehend them. Keep your head on a swivel. CBP figures show that the number of Iranian nationals, entering our country illegally rose precipitously under Joe Biden's open borders policy. During that period, at least 1,500 Iranians crossed the U.S. border illegally, and over 700 were released into the country. Now, the 1,500 number is not an accurate assessment because we frankly have no idea, because they weren't even keeping track of so many of the people coming across who evaded capture and evaded notice because the border was wide open. So we don't know. We don't know how many dangerous people are here, how many Iranians who believed in that ideology of the Ayatollah who now is buried. Think about that. Over 1,500 Iranian nationals traveled multiple oceans to enter the U.S., not through legal ports of entry, but unlawfully at our border. It's just a small sample of the mess we inherited from Democrats with their radical ideology and the mess that President Trump and Republicans are working in earnest to clean up so we can save American lives and protect the homeland. And now we have, look, DHS is not just ICE and CBP, okay? It's so many agencies responsible for keeping us safe. You're talking about the Coast Guard, you're talking about FEMA, our cybersecurity infrastructure. our counterterrorism coordination, all of that is at stake right now, and the Democrats are going to vote tomorrow not to fund those operations. Just think of that. Massive mission critical functions, especially right now. And the military action in Iran makes it all more urgent and crucial to have a fully funded, fully staffed DHS across all its departments. They cannot argue otherwise. It's madness. As members of this body, our first and most basic duty is to ensure the safety of American citizens. Maybe that's why they sat through that line at the State of the Union. They're more interested in protecting illegal aliens. They see that as their first responsibility. There's no other way to explain this. If they ever want to correct the impression that their party prioritizes the welfare of illegal aliens over the welfare of American citizens, tomorrow would be a great place to start. But they, again, have sent out a whip notice instructing Democrats to vote down Homeland Security funding. I got to drop the mic right here and walk out of this room. That's all you need to know. But I'll take a few questions. Chad.
You obviously don't think that the president needs an authorization from Congress for war. But do you think if this goes south after a while, and Democrats are going to have a vote tomorrow in the House, try to engineer a war powers vote tomorrow in the House, that could be a problem for Republicans this fall if there is public sentiment against the war down the road?
Look, we don't make political decisions at a time like this. We're making decisions that are necessary to keep American citizens and troops safe. That is the first responsibility. Unlike the Democrats, we don't sit around in a back room and decide what's politically expedient. We do what we must do to protect the homeland, and we let the chips fall where they may. And to protect our interests, to protect America First priorities and principles, and that's the people of this great country. And so I trust the American people. I trust that they will evaluate all these things and they will understand that this administration did the right thing. I think they'll reward it politically, but if people get a bad taste in their mouth for what happened back here in the first part of the year in Iran, they just do. But we know, and history will record, we did the right thing. I think passage of a war powers resolution right now would be a terrible, dangerous idea for all the reasons I've just explained. It would empower our enemies. It would kneecap our own forces. And it would take the ability of the U.S. military and the commander-in-chief away from completing this critical mission to keep everybody safe. Iran has attacked 3 of our U.S. embassies in the last couple of days. Okay, those are sovereign territories of the U.S. They have declared war on us. I don't believe in the semantics. We've talked about the language this morning. We're not at war right now. We're 4 days in to a very specific, clear mission, an operation, Operation Epic Fury, which has 2 components, as you know, that we have articulated over and over. The president has, the Commander of the Joint Chiefs, everybody has explained. 2 points. We had to take care of these ballistic missiles that they were producing at such a rapid pace that our regional allies could not keep up with. We had to ensure that they can't fire all those barrage of missiles at our people, our troops, our assets, our citizens in the region, and our installations. We're taking that out. We had to. It's a defensive operation. And secondly, we had to take their Navy down. That's effectively what, in layman's terms, that's what's happening right now. That will be done quickly. As they explained this morning, we're, I think, hours away probably from having full operational control over the skies over Iran, which means that this mission can be completed quickly. We expect that it will be. And then we will hope and pray that the Iranian people take this moment of opportunity, rise up, take their country back, and that freedom can flourish there for the first time in generations. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, thank you so much. Some of your members, as you know, Congressman Davidson included, oppose this Iran operation, which the president himself has called a war. Are you confident that you have the votes to defeat the war powers resolution tomorrow?
Yes, and I had a discussion with Congressman Davidson this morning. He's a dear friend and brother of mine, and we, iron sharpens iron. We disagree on issues, and we have those discussions. He and I have done this a lot. He said this morning in front of all their House Republicans, he's not yet sure how he's going to vote on the war powers resolution. I believe we have the votes to put this down, and I certainly pray that's true. Because, for what all the reasons I said, it would put the country in serious harm, and it would certainly jeopardize the lives of our troops and all those who were involved in making these great sacrifices to defend us. We have to put this down. Monitor.
You said on Monday, talking about the start of this war, you said that Israel was determined to act in their own defense here, with or without American support. You also said if Israel fired upon Iran, they would have immediately retaliated against us, personnel and assets. But the president said yesterday that it was him, it was the United States that might have forced Israel's hand. So why are you and the president not on the same page?
We're
at
on-
the start of the war?
We're on the same page. I'm not at liberty to say publicly much of the classified information that I get in all these briefings, and that's always the delicate part of this, because if we say too much, then it reveals methods and sources, and it eliminates the ability of our extraordinary military and intelligence community to do what they do. The president has explained his analysis and his thought. Obviously, Israel is a close ally. They're in close communication. But everything I've said and everything he said is all true. They're not inconsistent in any way. Israel saw Iran as an existential threat. We should have seen them as well, but they were they were literally a neighbor. So if Iran said publicly, they all told us why, okay? If they had the ability, they would wipe Israel off the face of the earth. That is why they were trying to enrich uranium. And even though we took out the nuclear facilities several months ago, they were still working on their nuclear ambition, even through the negotiations, as I said. And they were producing missiles at such a rapid pace that they were building up an arsenal that would have done untold damage to Israel and other neighbors there, right there in the Middle East. So Israel saw that as an existential threat. Bibi Netanyahu has explained all this publicly. He's stating the obvious. Everybody knew that. They saw a moment of opportunity. They had to act in their own survival, and we knew and understood, and this has been explained by the Secretary of State, the President, myself, and everybody else. The unclassified part is that if this kinetic activity began, then Iran was determined to hit us, our personnel, our assets, and all that. If the Commander-in-Chief and his administration and our officials waited for all those casualties to be exacted, they would have been drug up here and put through an inquest like you've never seen before, because the Democrats would have had a field day and said, if you had all that exquisite intelligence, why didn't you protect us? So it's a no-win situation for them. That's what the president and everyone has tried to explain. There are different ways to explain it. It's all the same truth. None of that has changed. It's entirely consistent. Last one. Yes, sir. Last, back row.
President Trump said this is expected to be a 4 to 5 week campaign, but that he opened the door for potentially longer than that. We heard several of your members yesterday coming out of the briefing. Some said they support the engagement now, but that may change if this ends up being something that drags out. If we're sitting here 8 weeks, 10 weeks down the road, and this is still happening, would your position, at least on a war powers resolution, change?
But look, I'm not going to get into hypotheticals. What we need to do right now is stand together as a country. We need to stand with our brave servicemen and women who are in harm's way, stand with the president on this critical mission to keep us safe, and we will do that. Congress will do its job. We will perform our oversight responsibilities, but the first duty, as I said earlier, is to keep the country safe, and that's what we're focused on right now. Thank you so much.
Supplemental